think you plan for everything. We'll figure it out. So, good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming, and thank you all for showing up on a really quick turnaround here. I felt, in response to everything we've seen in the last couple weeks, it was really important to have the opportunity for people to hear from me directly and to get plenty of time to talk about this. We've got a full 2 hours tonight. I think that's really important to make sure that this isn't a rush thing. But it's also, budget season starts tomorrow, so the next couple weeks are kind of 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. budget hearing sessions, so we would have had to do something like in mid-June, have not done it, now. So appreciate everyone finding time to make it out. Looks like we've had a pretty good turnout this evening. So yeah, as Jeff mentioned, so I want to talk kind of briefly about some things I've been working on. Before I do that, I just kind of want to level set here with how seriously I take public safety and the very real violent crime challenge that we've had in this neighborhood, for some time, especially over the last 4 years. So is this coming in now? Can folks on hear me clear? Kind of. Okay, great. So for those who don't know, I live next to Cross Street Market. My wife and I were, 2 little ones there. I was a victim of an armed robbery. It was 3 p.m. by daylight. About 2 years ago. I'll only bring that up to say that I just feel like it's, I moved to Baltimore, I moved to this neighborhood because I wanted to be in a rural neighborhood, and I wanted to know my neighbors, and I wanted my neighborhood to be historic and have a sense of place, and that my neighborhood be a part of me, and my neighbors I have meaningful relationships with my neighbors, and I think for kind of anyone who's known me over the last 6 years, that I am really, really about that, and something that, my wife and I, we're not moving, but I don't want my block to be, me, my family, and a bunch of folks who move out every summer because they don't feel good or safe about staying in the neighborhood. And that's a real challenge that we've had. And it's always a citywide challenge, but it is also if we look at the data, and I put together some stuff just for folks to see in the handouts. In 2022, crime and violent crime numbers in Federal Hill basically doubled over the 10-year average before that. In 2023, it was a little higher. In 2024, last year, it made a substantial drop, made about 25%, still higher than what we had been seeing for the 10 to 12 years before that. So right now, where we're at this year, frustratingly, that violent crime number is essentially the same as what it was last year. Property crime is dropping significantly, and there's certainly things to be optimistic about. Citywide, there is a lot to be optimistic about, but very frustratingly, it's not something in this kind of greater Federal Hill area. I guess we'll call it that the part that's the neighborhoods that are near the Inner Harbor, near our bar district, impacted by a lot of people coming and going. That this is a massive challenge that we've had, and it's something that I take extremely seriously, and am both personally personally impacted by, as well as and working really hard with everyone else to try to make it happen, to improve the situation. So you can read the handout, but this was from 2 weeks ago, roughly when I put this out. There's a couple bullet points in there. I just want to highlight a couple of those things, and we can talk more about it once we get into the question and answer session. Some of these things are going, I think, well. So, a year ago, we started the movement team at Digital Harbor, something I was involved in helping getting set up as a community member. And basically, it's a kind of a hall monitor meets connecting to services, meets general climate control type environment in the school, as well as being outside the school a little bit during school hours, but especially before and after school. That is something that we've seen, I think, really positive impacts both with students and with the school, but also with particularly with property crime in the area around Digital Harbor over the last year. It's something I've been advocating to make sure that with all the federal funding cuts, like a lot of this stuff is at risk, but making sure that this is something that we're able to find money for in the budget. Optimistic that we're going to be able to do that, but it is incredibly important. A brief note with that, we had some questions that came up at the Neighborhood Association meeting last Tuesday about what are we going to do about summer school. And so something that we're looking to do is expand that service at least partially over summer school, particularly in that before and after the end of school day, which is incredibly important. So that's something that, just so everyone knows, we are looking at the situation over summer school. It's tough because it's not kids from digital and it's not teachers from digital, it's kids and teachers from all over the city, but it is also, it's a much smaller footprint of students. So, but that is something we're looking at. I've been putting a good amount of time and work in with the bar owners as well as Sheriff Kogan to figure out, and BPD is going to be making to it, we had to cancel the one that they were going to get, but they've been involved as well, to have to figure out, working with the bar owners to fund a sworn officer off-duty patrol in basically the bar district, right, where all the bars are in the neighborhood. And that's something that a lot of the bar owners, even though it's mostly going to be their money, have been actually really interested in helpful partners in. So optimistic there. There's some things that we have to work through that challenge on, but we're working that. We had a hearing, so I'm the vice chair of the Public Safety Commission, it's a Public Safety Committee, which Jeff alluded to. We've had a couple hearings that have been really good and I think very relevant for the types of crime that we're dealing with a lot of in the neighborhood. One of them was over the city's summer youth engagement strategy. And a lot of that, unsurprisingly, has to do with the Inner Harbor and the greater Inner Harbor, the greater downtown area, which very much includes Federal Hill Park, Cross Street Market, and whatnot. I feel really good to say that the mayor's team is putting in a lot of effort there, and we're going to see that. They started earlier than they did last year. It's a more robust program than we had last year. There's some, I'm certainly interested in figuring out how to expand that to Federal Hill Park as part of that patrol. Things we're working through with them, and they're really interested in this effort. So that's good. On maybe one more positive thing before I get into some negatives. We had, Department of Juvenile Services, I'm sure we'll have several questions about Department of Juvenile Services tonight. So figuring out, how things have been going, particularly after how challenging the last couple of years have been with youth crime and with the specific problem of young people committing a violent crime and getting arrested, brought to Department of Juvenile Services intake, and then being released and then going on to commit something else, right? And that really flies in the face of it makes people feel like what is our leadership doing to make us safer if they're not doing this, right? And so that's incredibly important. Something that we found at that last hearing that we had a week and a half ago, I think, was effectively that when a law enforcement officer brings in a youth to charge them with a crime, when DJS, when the law enforcement officer recommends that they be detained before their trial, right, which can be a couple weeks, can be up to 2 months, I think. I mean, it's a while, and DJS overturns it, 30% of those youths either commit a crime or fail to appear in court after that. So that's actually that's a really high number. And so that's a really alarming thing. That's something that after the hearing I got with the public safety chair and the council president to discuss what are we doing about that. We are actively working with DJS on that matter specifically. I've got a meeting with Secretary Schiraldi, who's the secretary for DJS, on the books, I think, right after budget week ends. And so that is a real problem that we are very serious about. On the bright side, some feedback that I've gotten from both the police department as well as the state's attorney's office is both entities feel like Since some legislation passed on the state level in November, DGS has been a much more collaborative partner in sharing information for youths who have committed crimes and coordinating with their entities. So there's a lot of progress that needs to be made, but there is things to be optimistic about as well. And then, lastly, or two more things. One, dirt bikes, weather's warming up. I've gotten plenty of frustrations and complaints via phone and email about this, the last month or so. I'll talk BPD briefly, and then I'll talk kind of other options to reduce that challenge. So, had the opportunity to meet with the Lieutenant Warren, who oversees response to dirt bikes for the Baltimore Police Department, and they've done some restructuring of that organization within the city, but I think they've gotten things moving in the right direction. They do have, to be a little tight-lipped here, but they are working on an upcoming effort that over the course of the summer, some continued support that I think will have a positive impact on the dirt bike challenge in the neighborhood along Key Highway. It also, what's really tough, and I want to be very clear, the challenge with dirt bikes is not that the administration condones the use of dirt bikes in the city, and they've, at all entities, from the mayor's office to BPD, it's not that they're cool with it. The challenge is enforcing the law, right? Like, if you can catch someone at a gas station, great. If you can get a tip line, right, if someone has someone with a dirt bike next to their house, or you have someone next to your storage unit, and you call that in, those bikes can be seized, and they do get seized fairly regularly. The challenge is when dirt bikers are riding on Key Highway from 8 p.m. to 3 a.m. On Friday and Saturday and Sunday night over the summer, without a cop car chasing a dirt bike is dirt bikes are much more maneuverable than cars, and this is a city, right? And also it just puts the police officer, the offender, and everyone else in danger to do that. So we do Foxtrot. The helicopter is used whenever there's not a homicide or robbery or a violent crime that they're responding to. They are used during these peak times to help crack the case on dirt bikes. And it is like I said, it's something that they've got some upcoming efforts around, but that challenge is that challenge. And I know for the 6 years that I've been here, it's been a challenge. The other side of that is that because it's so hard to enforce, it's a really good opportunity, or it's necessary to have a whole of government to find other ways to address the dirt bike challenge. Something that I've advocated for since before I took office was either reducing the number of lanes on Key Highway or putting in speed bumps or rumble strips or something like that. Specifically, I'll just say specifically towards reducing the number of lanes. Key Highway does have fewer cars on it than Eastern Avenue south of Patterson Park does on a given day. And Eastern Avenue is one lane in each direction, so it's not a highway. Highways aren't 1.3 miles long. They don't have 13 red lights in those 1.3 miles. There's things like that, and that's something I've been advocating for with DOT, and if that's something that you feel passionately about to advocate with me on, I would certainly appreciate everyone raising their voice on. Or if you have other good ideas of how to address it. But that is an enforcement challenge, not a dealing with whether or not we're going to deal with it issue. So with that, I think the last thing I'll say before, because I've rambled for quite a bit, but before I go into the Q&A session of this, in your packet, there's some crime trends and some data from DPD. But on that last page, there's two QR codes. The first one, so we have a South Baltimore camera network. What that does is if you have a Ring doorbell camera or something like that, it allows you to put not like a stream from your camera, but just your contact info, some info on where the camera's pointing, and whatnot on there. And so the neighborhood public safety volunteers, when there's a crime that say happens on your block, they can look and say, hey, we have this person has cameras. We can email them or call them and say, what about this footage at this time? Can you find anything for us? And it's something I've been involved with for like 4 years, since I was chairing the block captain program. And it was for anyone who is a Federal Hill Neighborhood Association member, that this past September meeting, when Nigel was talking about, he was talking through 4 violent crimes that had happened over the summer, and in 3 of those 4 crimes, they had been able to charge an offender because of data. Not taking any credit from BPD or anybody, but with data assisted with video evidence that they got from the camera network. So it is a real meaningful way that all of us can participate in making the neighborhood safer. And then with that, there's also, the city has a program where if you register your camera with the city's City Watch program, which is similar, basically the same thing, but for BPD, you get a $150 rebate. Most of the camera systems you can get are less than $150, which means it's free. You just got to install it. So, so that is it's important that everyone, residents, business owners, myself, the mayor's office, BPD, state attorney, everybody, takes ownership of the crime challenge in the neighborhood. That's a really good way that folks can get involved. So I think that's all that I have. We have plenty of time for me to hear people's thoughts and to answer questions.
And the council member is going to scoot over. We're going to tether him, I guess. There we go. I'm going to come around, and I will hand the microphone to you guys, and then we'll go. But first, as I said, I'm a neighborhood association president on the peninsula. I was instrumental in working with both Zach, Federal Hill, and everyone on getting the camera program set up. It is absolutely one of the most tremendous things that a community can do, and also is the fact that it has literally helped solve crimes. And even so, the camera network is actually featured on a Discovery Channel episode about a crime that happened in the peninsula that was solved through a camera on someone's house that basically BPD has said that wouldn't have been solved unless the camera was on that person's house. So with that, we're going to start questions and answers. So just raise your hand and I will come over, and then you can ask your question, and then Zach will give you the answer. So I'm going to start right here. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Kathy McCluskey, and I live at 911 South Charles. A couple of weekends ago, I came home and I saw yellow tape everywhere, and apparently there had been a shooting. We never got the straight story on Cross Street. And the person who was shooting, I don't know, or who was shot, was somewhere around our building, or had come. It's all stuff that we heard that we have no idea what was real. Can you give us updates of what happened? Did they ever catch anybody? Did our camera systems, which we have been trying to update and improve on our building, 911, did that help?
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. So I'm pretty sure you're talking about, this was 2 weeks ago. There was a discharge. It was on late on a Saturday night. There was a discharging, which means someone was shot but didn't hit anybody. I think that one was on Charles Street, and then there was a shooting where someone was shot on the foot on Cross Street, and they think those were related. They happened pretty close in timeline after the bars had let out in the evening. There's been okay. Well, I'm glad that BPD is here. Yeah, so there has been arrest in this case specifically. So, and if I can just kind of, so that's the update there. But specifically for the camera system, and I appreciate you bringing that up, especially on buildings that are on corners and can point cameras down streets in multiple directions. It is a huge asset to have an operational camera system up. So if the system's not working, or if there's some issue like that, I'm positive the Public Safety Committee for the Neighborhood Association would love to help
help figure out how to get that moving forward, because that building would be really, really useful if it doesn't have multiple cameras already, if it has them, so. Oh, okay. Yep. Right. Yeah, so they did make an arrest, and I know that they believe that the gunshot wound to the foot was self-inflicted. That was at least the original report I'm seeing. And that was the interpretation at the time. I'm not sure if they were able to make an official determination there.
Yeah, real quick, as on specific cases, it may be tough for the council member to get in on specific cases because they are active investigations. We do have our folks from BPD and State's Attorney's Office, so thank you guys for coming. But just be aware, if you ask like, hey, this happened on my block, it may be tough. That just comes from my experience doing this public safety chairing for many years before I went on for President of Riverside. So that is just something, may be tough for the council member.
Thanks.
Yeah. So next question. Yes, ma'am. Wait 1 second. I'm going to come to you.
Yeah, and we need for.
Hey y'all. So dirt bikers, literally, I got pulled over by a cop on a Friday night on Light Street for not having my front license plate on. But as I sat there, the dirt bikers were racing by up and down the street, through traffic, onto the sidewalk, which again I saw yesterday. Cop didn't seem very interested in any of that. But literally the dirt bikers up and down, up and down, up and down, and we're going on the sidewalk on Sunday night at like 7:30 in the evening when there are all lots of people and kids and dogs. I mean, have y'all thought about like spike strips? Just throw them down and let the dice go where they may. Like, and if those little fools go toppling over into the harbor, too bad, so sad.
Yeah, so I think I saw the same flock of dirt bikers that you did on Sunday evening. Yeah, and so.
Didn't see the cops interested.
Being, right, like, I wasn't there, right, I'm not going to speak for the officer, but when you can't, but what I'm saying is when they don't chase, that is a policy decision, right, because you're going to have a cop car, the challenge is the cop car is chasing a dirt biker down a sidewalk.
What happens if a dirt biker hits a toddler or a dog? Because let me tell you, I will go full metal jacket if somebody hits my dog. Then we're going to have a problem.
And I, like, and what happens, and what, yeah, and then what, like, believe me, I really, really do, like, share the fear and the frustration here. The question is what happens when the police officer chasing the dirt bike hits a toddler or a dog, is that's the, if there's, like, open to suggestions here, have given suggestions myself that I think have had good arguments against them. But there is the dirt bike tip line at baltimorepolice.org is no, it's a serious thing. It's monitored by the lieutenant who runs that oversight program, okay? And it's not a, hey, there's dirt bikes coming down the street, come get them. It's a, hey, the person in the house next to me is storing dirt bikes type of thing. Like, that's more what it's used for.
It's not
But
hard to find them. They're out every Friday.
So let me touch on this. As I said, been doing this a long time.
I mean, it's not unsolved mystery.
Right. So anyway, and Aaron and the folks over at BPD can correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Let me finish, and then we will get to you. So with BPD, as you know, there are certain policies. Most jurisdictions throughout Maryland have a chase policy. So most jurisdictions, I don't believe, Aaron, I don't think you've looked at all the policies across Maryland, but most of Maryland jurisdictions cannot chase a motorcycle or anything. I know state police have stopped doing this, and this is only because if Jeff didn't have his day job, Jeff would probably be pushing a patrol car around for many years because his dad's a retired cop. So, but you're seeing this throughout the United States just because the safety issue with trying to chase the dirt bikes. Now, I will say there's been a couple of things that really helped dirt bikes in a couple summers ago. The Dirt Bike Task Force, which it sounds like they may be kind of reconstituting some of those, they had intelligence officers and dedicated police officers working with them, looking at Instagram, Snapchat, everything, trying to figure out who are these kids that are riding dirt bikes and everything. Then BPD was able to determine who those kids were and then go in and seize those dirt bikes. I think, I forget the number of seizures. They had like one summer 250 dirt bikes seized. Now, of course, it's a little bit like whack-a-mole, but you know, the main thing is just safety for folks on the road. So, you know, other than if you're in a jurisdiction like out in the Midwest, which if you haven't watched Live PD on Saturday nights, always great, not many jurisdictions are going to chase a dirt bike fully. Yeah. So, yes, ma'am.
I'm with this lady about the dirt bikes. I live in the senior building at the harbor. On Saturday, Sunday, and Monday at 3 o'clock in the morning, they've been up and down, and they were so loud that my dog hid under my bed. I want to tell you, we have hotels. I used to be in tourism. If you think people want to come to Baltimore, you want to make Baltimore great again, you better do something about these bikers, because you can't be in a hotel room sleeping at night and think you want to come to this city. My son stayed over one night, and he couldn't fall asleep because of the doggone bikers. Now, you have to, can they be banned?
So
Why can't they be banned?
they are banned. They're
They're banned.
owning a dirt bike is illegal in Baltimore City, which is actually not a common thing. Ownership of a dirt bike is not typically illegal. It's rare that we have that. The problem, once again, is if we can get a dirt bike at a gas station, or if they run out of gas, or if they happen to not be by it right, like, then the dirt bike will be seized, and they do get seized. BPD regularly seizes dirt bikes. To your point about scaring off tourists or giving hotel guests bad evenings, I hear you, and
I worked at the visitor center. You want to make Baltimore good, you want to bring the people back, you do something about it. Now, if I could, I'm not allowed to, I'd have a BB gun and I'd hit every one of them.
No comment on that one. Thank you, ma'am.
All right, I'm going to go over this side. So I'm going to go to this gentleman back.
Hi there, my name is Duncan. I want to pivot a little bit away. I do share your sentiment, however. I am quite frustrated with the dirt bikes. I want to pivot a little bit. I actually find your letter quite refreshing regarding the basically frustration with repeat offenders of the youth crime. But I think what I want to ask you to touch on a little bit is your and the City Council's communication with the Mayor's office, because ultimately the DJS Secretary is held responsible by the Mayor. Look, it seems to me, I guess I'm not understanding what the politics about it is, because, I'm a Democrat, we're all Democrats here. I mean, not here, but, in the government. But if the drive is that we don't want to lock kids up in jail, okay, that's whatever policy that might be, whatever the reasons behind that might be, sure. But then my question is, what's the plan moving forward? And because that's DJS, because it's coming from the governor and DJS and governor, the state administration, what are we doing as a city, City Council, City Council, to communicate our problems to the governor and to the mayor to say, hey, what's happening at DJS is not working?
Yeah, thank you, Duncan. And just to clarify, because I think you misspoke on the front end of it, so the Department of Juvenile Services is a state entity, right, and is a state agency. So the Secretary of DJS is an appointee of the governor. Right. Yeah, so it is I think your points are also the same, but it is important to clarify that. So what happens, the way it works in Maryland, I commit a crime, I'm arrested, I get taken to, central booking. If I am under the age of 18, it is a DJ, it's not a city official, it is a DJS intake officer who sees me and makes the initial determination of what to do. And what's challenging is DJS was formed as a system, as I understand it, because 20, 30 years ago, there was the general recognition that A, kids process things differently than adults, and B, when kids are locked up for extended periods of time, you typically, that like sets them not on the right track, that usually sets them towards recidivism and all these sorts of challenges. And so DJS was set up basically to be advocates for the youth. That's basically the constituency that they're representing. The challenge there, and we all, probably everyone, and this is not too soon, but at least most people in the room feel this, is that it's not their responsibility to consider the direct impact on public safety when they're making these decisions. They're thinking about just the youth. And so something, when I was speaking as like a path forward, one important piece of this, and something that the state's attorney's legislative lead mentioned is a top priority for them in this next, to advocate for in the next state General Assembly session in the beginning of 2026, is say, hey, the DJS is basically, they're the advocates for the youth alleged offenders, right? And the state's attorney is basically kind of representing public safety, right? So they're kind of on the opposite ends of this. And the adult system, it's the court, right? It's the magistrate who makes the decision of between arraignment and the trial, if I'm using my words right. Okay, Aaron's saying yes. The decision made by a magistrate. In the youth system, it's effectively made by DJS. And so that decision should be being made, this is the state's attorney's stance, and I just learned of it, but I think it's a really good idea that we need to be very seriously exploring, is probably needs to be made by the magistrate and not effectively by DJS. So, and that gets into the point I had made about almost 1 in 3 are either failing to appear in court or committing another crime in the next 2 months. And then, that's one piece of it. There's a lot of other pieces as far as making the plan better. For those of you who are aware, electronic monitoring, the ankle monitors, we used to mostly have ankle monitors that weren't GPS enabled. They just said if you were like in the house or not. They've started transitioning over, and they confirmed to me at the hearing 2 weeks ago that we are going to have GPS monitoring for all of the ankle monitors will GPS monitored come July. They said July 1st, so they're going to be updating us to confirm that by, I think July 5th is the deadline. It's right after the 4th of July. So there's a lot of things like that. There's a lot of things of shortening the amount of time when they pass a felony case that becomes the state's attorney's office jurisdiction. They've been taking, I think, too long to get that case passed over to the state's attorney. That process is being sped up, right? There's a lot of improvements that are being made. There's still improvements that need to be made, so.
Just a quick follow-up. Do you think it has to be a legislative change for the majority of that to work, or do you think there can be changes through different processes?
Yeah, so Duncan's question was, do these need to be legislative changes made by the state legislature or not? I don't know that for sure. I'm sure some of them are policy changes by the agency, and that's why, I've got a meeting with Secretary Schiraldi set up in a couple weeks. Like, there's a lot of these. BPD just hired one of the top folks at DJS, who now comes and works effectively liaising with DJS for BPD. That's been really helpful. So this is a very, long story short, a lot of work is being put in to solve this. Thank you.
And I'm going to go back here, but Zach, also just touch on the fact that for the city of Baltimore, it is tough because you guys, I believe, do not have oversight of DJS, because that is a state agency, so you can only recommend, and the secretary doesn't even need to have a meeting with them.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. It is worth noting, and certainly not trying to pass the buck away here or anything, but like, when we had a hearing, the city council can require city agencies like BPD to attend. We cannot require DGS to attend. Now, we have had pretty good collaboration with them recently on this, so that's good.
And we're going to go to the back. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Cord Simpler. I've been in Federal Hill for 50 years, if you can imagine that. I bought my house in 1972 when the highway was scheduled to be built right through our neighborhood, and the Fells Point Fun Festival was created to bring people downtown and see that the city is worth saving. So I have, a long history of hearings, meetings, petitions, hiring lawyers, et cetera. But I do want to express my displeasure about the dirt bikers. Displeasure is not even the right word. And I know you said that the mayor doesn't condone it, but the mayor also referred to the dirt bikers as a cultural institution. Now, I would personally not put them in the same category as the Baltimore Symphony or the Walters Art Museum. I don't think people are going to come to Baltimore to hear the dirt bikers. And it seems that, I know it's a nationwide problem, but to me, in view of the fact that the police don't chase these people to do anything with them, and I get all of the concerns with that, there doesn't seem to be an attempt to even track down where they are and destroy them as they did in New York, run them through a crusher or something. It has to be addressed. And if the mayor refers to them as a cultural institution, one of our neighbors went to a meeting just recently with the new head of the Southern District Police Office of that, our own district. Right. And when she asked about the dirt bikers, the response was that the woman in charge thought that they were historic and glamorous. So if you have a mayor that calls it a cultural institution, a local district commander who calls them historic and glamorous, we're doomed. I think that people, as a rule, are starting to vote with their feet. We're all just tired of it, and I don't know, I don't necessarily have a ready answer for it, but I think we have to do something, because one need only walk out of the church, walk down Light Street, and see the number of vacant businesses here. And I think people are just fed up with it. Friends of mine that live out in the suburbs are huge Orioles fans. They come down to the Oriole game. As soon as it's over, they turn around and make a U-turn, and they're out of Dodge. They just don't want to deal with it. And I think that we've got to figure out a way to get people back into the city. And I think with the dirt bikers and the commotion that they create, I mean, you can imagine eating at an outside table. The noise from these things is so deafening. I mean, it's really impossible to carry on a conversation. I can't imagine that there's no easy fix, and I get that. But I think that we've really got to do something to address it, because it's going to affect travel for people that would come to the Science Center, people would come to the aquarium. I don't know what the attendance records are. I looked them up online, but I didn't necessarily spend a lot of time with it. So I think it's something that we just have to address. I used to feel, in conclusion, that the city was dysfunctional. I've almost reached the point now that it's non-functional. I just don't see that the trash, the police, the whole works. We had an episode recently where a house across the street from me windows were smashed out. And the neighbor that lived next door called the police. They didn't show up for 25 minutes. And the kids that broke the window went up Warren Avenue, turned over flower pots, did a bunch of damage, get into the park, and he followed them in a distance, started turning trash cans upside down. When the police finally showed up, they sat at the turnaround at the very end of Warren Avenue and never got out of the car. So I feel that we've got to have a mindset here that is a little more positive and proactive. And also the mayor, as I understand it, wants to put a dirt bike academy in Harbor Place under the guise, and I'm using the word under the guise specifically, as a STEM project. So can you imagine with these kids, to refer to what the lady said over here, they'll be roaring up and down the promenade with, noise, and who's going to bring their kids down for that?
Yeah.
So thank you for listening.
Yeah. Yeah. Cord, there's I have no disagreement with the frustrations that anyone is voicing around dirt bikes in the neighborhood, first off, and I share them. And I know, your fun fact, the 100 block of East Montgomery, Cord was part of the crew that back in the late 70s or whatever exposed the underlying cobblestone on the block. So there's like, it's multiple decades of putting in work in the neighborhood that you've done that I really appreciate and admire. A couple points. One, your point about what Major Middleton said, that doesn't sound like something she would say. Brandy, my chief of staff, who's working in the back for us, made eye contact. We've got that as an after action. We're going to check on that. If that's the case, we'll certainly address that in conversation. That seems really unlikely. Towards the B360 office in Harbor Place, so I went and I got a tour of that because a couple of people had reached out about that. That is actually that is an after-school pro. There are no dirt bikes there. There are pieces of dirt bikes to work on mechanic stuff with. There's no teaching kids how to use dirt bikes. It is mostly like STEM class stuff. As we can probably all imagine, it is reasonably difficult to get 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds interested in STEM things. And so I think that is a really creative way to do it. I assure you, and I was assured, that there is no riding dirt bikes, learning how to do dirt bike stuff right outside of like how things work and doing mechanical things that is happening there. I grew up with several family members who were big in like the motocross scene, and that's, I have a lot of admiration for that, and it has no place in our neighborhood, and I fully agree with that here. And yeah, I think that covers that. If anyone's got, if there's another place that has done spike strips or whatever effectively and is using policy, I will happily, look into those things. It's a real challenge. Jeff?
I have one over here, and Cord, I just want to say, as the current chair of the Fells Point Fun Festival, thank you very much for Stopping the Road. And if you haven't read Ed Paul's book about Stopping the Road, great policy book on Baltimore.
Hi, my name is Al. I just have a quick preamble and then a question. The preamble is, I wasn't born this old. And when we came back from dinner last night, it's late, Key Highway, they're all around us. And what crosses my mind is, because I wasn't born this old, this looks like a lot of fun. This, if I'm a kid, looks like a lot of fun. This is energy, this is freedom, this is unsupervised bliss. And what troubles me is all the focus on capturing these kids in a cop car is insane. People are only going to get hurt. Put yourself in a cop car with a cop and go chase a kid who doesn't want to get caught on a motorbike, and you're going to kill somebody. You're going to kill a dog. My point is only this: all the effort in capturing the bikes. I mean, part of me, the Jiminy Cricket on my shoulder says, grab 20 kids who are into technology and drones, put them in front of screens, park a drone over a bike every night, and every night capture 20 bikes when they go home. 20, 20, 20, 20. I mean, the Ukrainians are doing it pretty well. The Russians are doing it pretty well. Drones are on the market. Kids love technology. But my point is this: the key word to me in all this is recidivism. I have a hard time saying it. Recidivism?
Yeah, I think so.
We are in competition for kids' attention. We're in competition for their hearts, for their minds, for their futures. And when I see kids out on those bikes, to me, it's not them. It's us. It's the culture. It's the society. I'm a flaming liberal. I get it. But the fact of the matter is, we're not my summary is only this: any money, time, effort put into solving this problem that isn't focused on competing for their time and attention and their futures in a better place to be sometime down the road, and that's really heavy lifting, is wasted. Because we can chase as many bikes with drones or with cop cars as you want. Kids are going to have fun. They're going to outwit us. They don't know the meaning of risk. They'll put other lives at danger. We got to be the adults in the room and empathize with what it was like to be a 12-year-old kid without a future, and to say, what do we do about that? Arrest them? Chase them? We got a little dog at home. The more I chase them, the more he doesn't want to get caught. That's what we're dealing with here. We've got to find a way to put money, time, effort, brains, and passion and commitment to the recidivism issue so that once they're caught and they can find a different path, they don't come back. It happens in universities all the time. Schools like Goucher, up in the Hudson Valley, what is it, Peg? Have these programs, schools and prison. The difference in statistics and recidivism for education in jail and prisons is incredible. And the prison systems don't like it because they're in the business of imprisoning. They're not in the business of education. And my challenge to government, ourselves, is we got to get in the business of growing kids and not so much, steely-eyed enforcement of the law. Because if we do the first one well, we can kind of spend less time and blood and money and treasure on the second. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, I really appreciate you bringing it up, Al. Obviously, that's something that, a perspective I don't always hear as much when it comes to the frustrations, and it's absolutely a fair point. And as someone who coaches high school football at Digital Harbor, it's something that I'm, A, couldn't agree with you more. B, that program, not because of me, coincidentally, but a couple years ago, we had 35 boys in the program for my first year coaching. This past fall, we had 75 boys in the program, right? Like that stuff, school got a little bigger, not that much bigger. Like that type of stuff really matters. And I think that that's something that between the mayor, between the council president, between a lot of folks on the council, that is something that we are making meaningful strides in. The opening and reopening of closed rec centers in the city, we're seeing a really very substantial investment in middle school sports. The arts across the city, across city schools, has the blueprint funding and whatnot is really substantially going to that. Something I've been really kind of happy with policy-wise is seeing the in general, a lot of electeds being like, hey, not every kid needs to go to college. Some kids should be getting prepared for careers. We need to invest more in the trades. Obviously we can't ignore the crime challenges of now, but read you absolutely loud and clear there. And I appreciate you bringing it up.
All right, next question. I was going to hit, there was a couple people in the center here that wanted one. Okay. Yes, sir.
I agree with what this gentleman said, and I thankfully...
Wait 1 sec, ma'am.
My name is Jennifer Boyer. I've lived here about 25 plus years. I live in Otterbein. I appreciate what you said. I am blessed to know many people who have that same passion in their hearts, and I do think that is something that we as a community need to invest in people and reach out across the neighborhoods that encompass this whole area and beyond, outside. But what before we pivoted away from dirt bikes too much, I witnessed last fall a number of squad cars chasing down food delivery people on motorized vehicles. And they chased them down one by one. I videotaped it. I watched them seize all of them down at the Inner Harbor right by the aquarium and put them on a flatbed truck. So I think that, what we're saying is it is dangerous to chase one. I have seen also the evidence of it, and then, all these vehicles were seized, and I don't know what was done, sold them or whatever, but I do think there needs to be more emphasis on finding the sources of who is gassing them up, where they're being stored, and just removing them from the population's hands, right? And then, but I do think there needs to be more, and the whole thing about drones and all that stuff, catching that. I'm a person who loves adventure, and we do need to do that. The thing I want to mention, though, is we were part of an incident that happened in our neighborhood recently, and I believe that my husband was the one being targeted, and the individuals, there were 5 youth, and one of the individuals said, no, the dog. So I think that they chose not to approach my husband in the park about 11:45 at night. He went and put the dog back in the house of the person whose dog we were watching, and he heard a person scream. He ran out. That within that very short amount of time, one of our neighbors who was across the street from where he went in had her jaw broken by an individual, a young female. The police response was amazing. They came immediately. They sent detectives. They took her. She identified every one of them. They took information from neighbors who had footage on cameras and my husband who could identify them with clothing. And sadly, every one of those individuals except one had any kind of consequence. And then they had to go and speak with Ivan Bates about getting the person who had broken her jaw get a higher, charge. And that just shouldn't be happening, and I know that this person was given an ankle bracelet, and I don't know all the ins and outs of that, but if you could address, I think that the importance is we need to be able to do more, because when 4 or 5 individuals are, attacking one individual, trying to steal her car, and then are just released and not even charged, that's a big problem, and someone else who couldn't be here tonight wanted me to bring up how much, vandalism there has been in the neighborhood, and that's something you could also address, what you guys want to do to try to stop that from happening.
Okay, thank you, Jen. I'll talk, and Jeff, if you can, or just keep the mic for Jen for a sec. So I'll talk about kind of that case, but also like how we stop that type of thing from happening, or make it happen less often, and then you can elaborate on your vandalism point. So I had the opportunity to speak with the victim of that crime, and then I think it ended up being on the news after that as well. So that is exactly the type of thing when we say young people are committing violent crimes and then getting released when they shouldn't be, that's a very egregious, but that's the type of example we're talking about, right? And so that's something that we brought up in the hearing. That's something we're going to flesh up in a subsequent hearing, likely later in the summer. That's something that I'm going to be talking about when I have the opportunities to meet with Secretary Schiraldi. That's something that, and I'm not positive about this because I was just informed of the state's attorney's office legislative advocacy here, but the types of offenses that have to go to that have to go to the magistrate versus stay with DJS. I think if I understood what they were saying and the details of that case specifically, that would be the type of thing that would be not kept at DGS. It would have to go before a magistrate. So there's an expanding what has to go before the court as opposed to, allowing DGS intake. So, no, I mean, that's that problem is, there's violent crime, which is bad in of itself. But then there's this feeling that, I think a lot of us have of it feels like the people who are supposed to be leading things don't care, are not doing enough about this. And that strikes it the moral, it's a moral failure to allow someone to commit a violent crime and then be released from it, right, immediately, right? And so that is, extremely serious about that. There's no air there anywhere amongst city electeds. There's no disagreement on that. There's no one hedging about, and going back to the point that I think Al made really well, there are things where you say, okay, how do we respond to that with our young people? And then there's someone's jaw was broken when they were jumped in the evening. That's not in that category, right? And there's, at least on the city side, there's no disagreement there. So to your second point, can you elaborate on what you're referring to on the vandalism piece?
I think all the activity that happened on Riverside with the smashed windshields and the golf clubs and all that stuff.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, we went out of town and I said, let's take the vehicles and leave them at his work by the airport. Because we just didn't want to have to worry a whole week.
Yeah, I got you. So that, there was a TikTok trend both here and in PG County at least, a month or so ago, about, that was the thing on TikTok, was riding around on bikes or scooters and hitting cars with golf clubs. And that happened. It wasn't just, it was in Riverside, it was in Canton, there were at least two, there was a case in Laurel, there was another case in PG County. That was a case where there's a lot of photo evidence of our young perpetrators, but nothing that was like a super, hey, this photo is this person, we can charge on it. There was, without going into the, can't speak about it, right, an ongoing investigation. That is something that, which that one, Aaron, that is still ongoing, right? Yeah. That is a prior.
Maybe their situation seems not as important about other things, please just call. It does matter to us, we would like to hear.
Yeah, thank you. And that was something that both, like the next day, both Aaron and Major Middleton were reaching out to me about that specifically, so thank you.
And sir, you were weighing more. Oh. Here, sir.
No matter what the long-term solution for the dirt bike problem turns out to be, one of the reasons that these young men are doing what they're doing is exactly as that gentleman said. It's fun. And I think in the short term, maybe 50 or 60 proper speed bumps, rubberized speed bumps on Key Highway, on Battery, on Warren, on Light, and on some of the small connecting streets like Churchill as well. So there's no tendency to just say, well, we can't go here, so we'll just go around the corner. Would help in the short run. It's not a long-term solution, but they're easy to put down, they're not expensive, they're easy to take up again if you want, and I think the city should think about it.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. That is, yeah, that's something that was discussed in the past. It's certainly, particularly as a short to medium-term solution, something that should be looked into. I had brought that up with the officer who runs that for BPD, and he had mentioned, like, what can we do about this? He mentioned speed bumps, and I said, this was right. If y'all remember a couple years ago, folks who live in the neighborhood, when the speed bumps went up on Warren Avenue, and it was like, and that didn't really work. So, okay, they kind of use those as ramps or whatever, but those are too smooth of bumps, and they're longer than the axles of the dirt bikes, right? And so they would need to be, if it's going to work, it would certainly need to be a different type. But that is, yeah, something we should probably revisit. I appreciate you, Mark.
All right, we have a question over here.
Yeah, just a couple of things. One, back to the fixing the dirt bike STEM program. As a math teacher, I've run STEM programs, and I've never had a speaker come teach the kids how to hotwire a car, for instance. But there are black women pilots. There are black technology entrepreneurs. It seems like if we have the money to, get kids involved, maybe our aspirations should be a little higher for them, as opposed to fixing dirt bikes. And maybe the money we get could be in programs for inviting people of color that are engineers, that are pilots, that are entrepreneurs. That's one thing that I wanted to mention. Another thing is in terms of these dirt bikes. We live on Montgomery Street, the cobblestone block. And, you know, almost every night, like clockwork in the evening, there are 50, we've counted them, we've stopped counting at 50, dirt bikes that come from Montgomery Street to Light Street and turn the corner. I mean, there can't be a cop car waiting there. It seems to me that we could identify them like we identify other people, and that something could be done about that. So that's a second thing that I wanted to mention. The third thing is, so since we live on Montgomery Street, we are on Key Highway, basically. And at night, you know, we sometimes try to have a conversation outside, but it's impossible in the backyard. And there have been times where the show includes little kids, like 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 5-year-olds. They get picked up from the kids on the dirt bike, and they're driven around. Now, they don't just drive down the road. You know, they're up, right, on the back tire of the road. And they're spinning, they're going the wrong way, they're driving around cars that are trying to get around Key Highway. I get the whole idea of energy and it looks like fun. But at that point, we're scared something's gonna happen. And we call. And so 911, you know, they ask us, well, are they doing anything? Well, there's little kids. The little kids are lined on the side of the road. They're being picked up by the dirt bikes. So, you know, we've waited an hour, neighbors have called. Finally, a cop car comes out there. The cop car pulls over on the corner of William Street and Key Highway, where the bikes are still riding. The kids are still on the side of the road. They're still picking up kids. The cop car is just sitting there. Some come up, have a little conversation at the window to the cop car, and then the cop car drives on. And then the group is still there. Maybe a half hour later, they'll move to Federal Hill. I mean, that looks like it's not just, you know, an inconvenience to us, but it's a danger, and we worry about it, and we don't want to wait till somebody's run over or hurt. And I do think we have a problem if our aspiration for these kids is to get them hooked on STEM, science and technology, is to get them interested in dirt bikes. I mean, drones, airplanes, all kinds of things.
Wait one second. I will come over you. But let me get over to Duncan. But if you want to answer that real quick, Zach.
Yeah. Couple different points, I guess. The one, I think. Yeah, I think we can certainly look and see if this is not a Baltimore-specific problem. So other people are trying to come up with solutions too, can see what's out there that's worked. The drone thing, as a guy who used to deal with drones in my old job, I'm certainly eager to discuss potential solutions here, and certainly there's also this sense of what is making sure that BPD officers know what they're not over-assuming what they can't be doing. It seems like someone who's been riding on a dirt bike should not be coming up off the dirt bike and talking to a cop car. That seems like an egregious issue, but I think that it falls in line with this whole conversation, and I hear you on the whole. I will say briefly towards your point about STEM education stuff. You're a teacher. Do you teach in city schools, or do you still teach? Okay. I am personally consistently impressed by the amount of work that, like, every good idea that I hear for how we can engage our young people, like, someone is putting a lot of time and effort into doing, whether it's within city schools or whether it's in rec and parks, whether it's I mean, like, you even brought up, like, you know, they're black female aviators. Could they come and have a part, right? Like, we have a summer camp within rec and parks that's an aviation camp, just as an example of, like, how many different types of things we have. And so there is it's not perfect, and obviously it's not fully succeeding. It's a challenging population, but there's a lot of effort being done there.
I'm going to let Duncan is next, this young lady, and then Sandy, I do see you. So
I want to connect that thread. So I've heard about someone breaking their jaw, police rushing with sirens, and really good response. I've heard a gentleman over here saying a crime committed that didn't quite meet that category of someone's getting shot, someone's getting stabbed, someone's getting punched in the face. I'm hearing crime saying that's not reaching that aggravated level, right? And the police, and I've had that happen to me as well, and the police aren't showing up. They're not showing up with sirens, they're not showing up with lights, they're taking their time. Part of the problem is because we're not a crime hotspot. I mean, BPD's strategy, it was on their website, I just looked it up, is to stay in a crime hotspot, right, and then go from there, right? So if 911's trying to figure out, is there a weapon, is there, are there guns, right? But if it's not reaching that level of crime, it doesn't seem like the police have the capability in our neighborhood to respond within 15 minutes. And I think that is an incredible problem for our neighborhood, because if we're not a crime hotspot, we're definitely an economic hotspot for the city. And I think that's probably the disconnect we're seeing here is I'm seeing a trend here that the police cannot respond to anything other than the most serious crimes within 15 minutes.
So
Yeah.
can you touch on BPD staffing as being on the Public Safety Committee, BPD staffing and, current staffing levels?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Duncan, your point, we are actually a crime hotspot in the Southern District, which goes, and that's, and it, well, no, and it, I point that out to say that that's something that, when I took office, that was something I wanted to make it really clear that was being communicated to kind of everyone who needed to know that crime in Federal Hill is not like just package theft and dirt bikes sometimes, right? Like that there is a statistically very serious violent crime problem. And that was something I campaigned on addressing. That's something that I've been thoroughly, that's something that the city is on the whole making meaningful progress in. The challenge is when you have, a staffing shortage of 621 officers out of 2,600, and you do have a city with a lot of crime, like things have to get prioritized and not prioritized. And now whether or not there are something that's come up is like efficiencies within the 911 system. There's a new system that computer-aided dispatch that's been requested that we're looking into the possibility of funding and things like that. Like it still needs to be addressed and it's still serious, but at some level we have scarce resources and a lot of things to address. So. So he said, so there's not even, I think there's a general sense of like, are they serious when they get there? Are they taking, all reported crimes seriously? And if that's not it, we had a property crime on my block 4 or 5 years ago where the officer showed up and it was a different situation. It was a different time I think that we're in now, but the officer was very dismissive, and we had a negative interaction, and that was not appropriate. And so it's certainly, like, that's not acceptable, and I don't think that Commissioner Worley or the mayor, anybody would say, like, if you call 911 and a police officer shows up and they're just like not taking it seriously, like that's not acceptable, and I'm not defending that.
I have a, yeah, go for it. Please, go ahead.
Hi, how are you? When I came tonight hearing about youth crime, I didn't realize it would be all about dirt bikes. We hear them as well. Didn't realize how large it was. This is a yes or no question first. At the beginning, you said this is a nationwide problem. So is there...
Youth crime?
Or the dirt bikes, or what are we talking about? Is that correct?
There's challenges in cities across the country on dirt bikes. I think I was talking about youth crime, which,
Okay.
yeah.
But, so, we see in the news all the time that, council people and police, they go to different conferences, Las Vegas and what have you. What do we know? Is there a what works? I mean, the gentleman talked about something in New York. I mean, what are we doing to engage with other cities that have this problem? So we're not trying to solve it sitting here. I mean, what works, what doesn't work based on best practices of other cities that have this? Has the city, and I know you can't speak for the police, have they explored this?
So, I'm sorry, ma'am, when you're saying this, are you saying the trend in youth crime that we've seen over the last 4 years? Dirt bikes specifically. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I think that, yeah. I'm going to do my part to get a better answer than I have on that, right? So it's a good question. It's been a good set of questions. I will say, you kind of referenced Court's point about what we saw in New York. We do that. We seize bikes. We seize, don't quote me on the number, but I think in 2024 it was somewhere slightly north of 200 dirt bikes in the year. Like, it's not like we're like, hey, we're going to let you go this time, right? Like, if the BPD gets a bike, they take the bike, and we do it fairly regularly. Clearly it's not happening enough. No one in here is disagreeing with it. But yeah, now to your point about, like, there has to be someone's got to be doing this effectively and safely. And we need to get a better answer to that. So I agree with it. Thank you.
I want to thank you for coming and doing this, and I'd love to, every month, if you could send out something about how many bikes are seized. I was at the Southern District meeting with Guy and my husband, and it wasn't Major Middleton's perspective that it was glamorous and historic, but she was referring to some of the perspective of the city of why we aren't getting it under control. And I really feel like part of the issue is the mayor's office is talking out of both sides of her mouth, like, let's get it under control, and then let's set up a repair center at the harbor. I worked at schools too, and there's really cool STEM activities, robotics, and kids love all of that. I don't think narrowing lanes of streets will help us at all. I would not be in favor of that. I love the idea of the speed bumps. I think that's great, but real speed bumps, I think we're in a real quality of life crisis in our neighborhood. We have a lot of people here and a lot of people online more than ever, people that usually don't come out for meetings. Thanks, Deb. I love it. But, at the harbor now, you can't even ride on there if you're on an electric bike or a scooter, but you can come into Federal Hill Park all hours of the night. I'd like to see, can the city support us by putting full-time security at the park to get people out of the park? I listen to Ed Norris a lot on the radio and TV, and he thinks this is like a joke, like it's easy to get rid of these dirt bikes. If the helicopter just continues to find where they go, you seize the bikes, you get rid of the bikes. There are a lot of fun things for the kids to do besides riding the dirt bikes. It is destroying our neighborhood. Calta is destroying our neighborhood. And it shouldn't be across the street from a playground and a park with kids hanging in their car, adults hanging in their cars, getting high, going into the park with children, throwing down diapers, going to the bathroom in the park, leaving trash, leaving it unsafe. I would like to know what can be done about Calta. It's a good-looking store. If it were something other than drugs, I'd probably go into it, okay? But it shouldn't be there. This is our neighborhood. We are committed to this neighborhood. And we need your help. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy.
Real quick before you begin, sir, let the council member answer, and then we'll come to you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, Sandy, thanks for the question. Deb, thanks for coming. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out a creative way to restate how much I'm in agreement on these things. I appreciate your point about Major Middleton's, that not being Major Middleton and that being someone else, and that, yeah, thank you for clarifying that. That is, you know, and one, it's not a repair shop, right? There's no bikes in there, right? And so to the, you know, dirt bikes, having dirt bikes in a on a dirt bike, there are places that dirt bikes are good. They're not good on Key Highway. They're not good in Federal Park. There's nowhere in the neighborhood around the harbor where they're good, right? So that is an important distinction to make there. But yes, I fully agree on all the points of we really do need to figure out a solution there. To your point about, you kind of briefly touched on the turning off e-bikes in the inner harbor. That was a good idea that I got briefed on like right before it happened, and was like asking why, and they explained it, okay, and then Stephen brought it up of like, hey, why haven't we done this at Federal Park? And I was like, actually, that makes a ton of sense, because you don't travel through Federal Hill Park to go anything, right? So that's something I reached out about. Hopefully we'll have that set up in the next couple. I don't know how long it takes the geofencing thing, but I've talked to the mayor's office about that. I think it's a good idea. I'm sorry, your last point, Sandy? Colta. Oh yeah, Colta, yeah. So, Colta is a marijuana dispensary, which is within, I think it's 500 feet of Federal Hill Park. And someone sent me an email with the write-up on the state code for this. I was looking this up the other day. Was it Guy? Okay. Someone did send me, yeah, Jeff, if you can jump in.
So as I said, in a lot of years doing this, marijuana dispensaries are regulated by the state of Maryland. Is the alcohol, tobacco, and control, it's ATTCC. So it's regulated. What's interesting about it is with a dispensary, there is no public hearing like a liquor license to allow whether or not a dispensary comes into your area. So that is something that has a nuance. And the licensee can transfer in. Now, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Cannabis Commission, that's right, actually is doing they started doing multiple raids. You saw that hit the news, where they're checking to make sure the dispensaries are doing that. That's a tough problem. Like, as I said, I'm involved in some stuff in Fells Point, and they're having the same problem. So, Sandy, I talk to your friend Liz all the time, a good friend of mine. So, that's just a tough problem on the dispensary, because there is no public hearing, there is no thing. The dispensary has to meet certain guidelines of the state, but there is no public hearing like a liquor license.
Yeah, we're looking through things. It seems like there's a bit of, because the law is new around it, there's some loopholes that might be being exploited right now. There's a legal marijuana dispensary where people don't have a license. That's obviously not the issue with Colta, but that is something that's been being cracked down on recently. But yeah, on the radar. Appreciate you bringing it up, trying to figure out what our options are.
Yes, I'm Abe from the Audubon community, and our venting our frustrations and our anger about the crime and the crimes that have been perpetrated on each and every one of us here, and individuals, is going to go unaddressed as long as we have elected officials who are not accountable for their actions. This is what the problem is, and it's going to continue until our elected officials become accountable for these matters here and bring about a change. And as far as the police department is concerned of Baltimore City, I personally know Richard Worley. I've seen him at the Artscape, as I see him at many events around here. And you guys have seen me around the neighborhoods and talking with people, and many police officers. Their hands are tied. The police commissioner his boss is Scott, okay, Mayor Scott. And he can only do as much as he can. I've talked to him many times and many other police officers. We lose police officers throughout Baltimore City because their hands are tied, or they leave, or they don't want to come into the force. That's what the problems we're having because it's our elected officials. Take a look at it for what it is. Fox 45 News has recently done a survey of that matter, of accountability. And each and every one of the elected officials they find to be unaccountable. From the poll, like 100%, was it? Something of that nature, yes. And Westmore had hired this guy, Givoldi. Prior to his having a job, giving the job here, he was at New York City with a justice position, and then in Washington, D.C., and he was fired from both places. They found to be a joke. So Westmore decides he's going to take him on. And then, now what is he going to feel bad or something like that because he made a fool of himself in taking this guy on? So he's going to keep him, we suffer for it? And you're going to meet with him to say what? I'm asking you a question.
Oh, sorry, I thought that was rhetorical. Yeah, so.
Yes, you're going to meet with Westmore knowing that he was fired, or
Secretary Giraldi, yeah.
Givoldi, knowing that he was fired from New York City and Washington, D.C., because he was found to be a joke and unaccountable for his actions in getting nothing done.
Yeah,
and when he's asked by news reporters a question of such, you know, he just blows them off, and then it's a stupid look on his face.
So I guess two separate things. One, the city administrator is the mayor's number two, the police commissioner, director of Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. They were here, speaking of elected officials being accountable, they were here to talk about all the administration's work and whatnot and to listen to folks. In January, City Administrator Lease made the commitment to come back in, I think it was at the end of the summer, so we expect to see them then. I'll let the administration speak for the administration, but they have been here. The first meeting was in this building, right? So the second meeting, I assume, will be here as well. So they are here, and they're here to talk about crime and public safety. So they can talk for themselves there. So I'll double. I don't think he was fired from those two jobs. I will double check on that. So to go back as to what, but to your point about what am I, like, what can we do to be productive? I think as city council members for a state appointed official, specifically in this case, like I've mentioned a couple times, we have this specific, I think the number one pressing thing is when we have a young person who has been charged with committing a violent crime or some sort of serious property crime, like an auto theft, how do we stop ending up in situations where they're back out committing another crime a couple days later? And that needs to be, whatever the policy is, whatever the number needs to be, it definitely can't be 30% within 60 days. And now some of that is failure to appear, meaning they just didn't show up for their court date. That's also really bad. Not to screw the numbers up, but so that is the number one pressing thing that planning on discussing. There's others, but. Jeff?
All right, Zach, real quick, we're going to take a question that's came in on the chat. Where's a good place for, like, if I want to look up crime statistics and everything, where's that? And then we'll go over to this young lady here.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I thanks to whoever asked that, and thanks, Jeff, for joining online. So we have some handouts that we were able to pass out to folks who are here in person. I didn't think to have a digital copy. I don't know if we'd be able to get that out or post that in the comment section while we're still on the call. I know we got some time left. So the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, MONSE, runs a public safety dashboard that they pull. The data gets pulled directly from the Baltimore Police Department data on. It gets updated, I think it's daily. It's pretty frequently. And it has, so for folks who have the handout that I gave, they can see it. And so you can see citywide, like, here's the trend the year to date, so this year versus last year, in homicides, violent crime, property crime. You can drill down into specific, how many aggravated assaults this year have we seen versus last year. You can also do that on the neighborhood level. So for those who have the paper handouts, you can see that data for both for both Federal Hill, and for the city as a whole. I use it a lot. We've got effectively like 15 neighborhoods in the 11th district, in my district, and I check this for basically all of them. That would be the place to go, and I think we could probably post that on the link to that in the comments box. It's very user-friendly, though, so thank you for asking. Do we have other questions? Oh, yeah, thanks.
I'm glad you were talking about the statistics, because that kind of ties into one of my questions, and also follow-up from over there, and Sandy's follow-up. We've seen a lot of escalation of more what I would consider to be violent crime, especially Montgomery and Battery, like right at the foot of the stairs. And I know that in the past 3 or 4 weeks, there's been at least 3 to 4 assault-like situations that have happened with groups of youth. And I'm not talking just 1 or 2 kids. We counted 27, and we saw an assault that happened, and we went into our house. As we were going into our house, I was threatened. Don't you call 911. I'll bleep out the obscenities, or we'll F you up. And we went in and called 911 and couldn't get through. Called several times. Our neighbors behind us called several times as well. It wasn't until later that we found out that it was never reported at all. So we reported the verbal threat to me and still haven't gotten follow-up. So that's really concerning. Like, it seems to me that sometimes stuff goes into a black hole. And I think that, I'm pretty sure that there's a lot that's being either non-reported or underreported, simply because we can't hook up to the right locations. So that's my first question, and then I have another one.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for, just to clarify, and I know that you guys are at, just based off of where y'all live, at the, like, the problems with both violent crime and just like the very consistent nuisance stuff in the quality of life stuff. Like, I fully recognize that, like, y'all are bearing the brunt of it just by where you live more than, as much as anybody else, more than most of us. That's terrible. I'm sorry that whole situation happened. That's exactly the type of thing we're trying to prevent. To your point about 911, so you were like, you were just on hold with like it just wouldn't.
It didn't go through.
What time of the evening was it?
7:30 on a Sunday.
Yeah, we will, definitely look into that. Like, that is like, absolutely should never happen. I don't know. Yeah.
My follow-up on that is that we have this evidently not a hard border between the Inner Harbor and Federal Hill, like Central District versus Southern District, and we've been told again and again it's not a real border, et cetera, et cetera. But it seems to be like those 27 youth that we counted came from across Key Highway and straight up Battery. It's on Ring cameras, and you always feel like you're safe if you're like in a place where there's tons of people. There were literally tons of people there. I can't believe that the cop that's supposed to be at the skate park didn't see like all of those kids just move en masse. And then not to be able to get through to 911, it just seemed absurd that there could be a surge like that into the neighborhood and violence done to 2 individuals while everyone just kind of stood there.
Everyone kind of stood there while someone was being assaulted?
Well, because we were all being threatened.
But, so the police officers...
No, there were no police officers because we couldn't get through. But,
Right.
like, there are police officers in the Inner Harbor
Right.
that are in their cars, like, all the time. Like, they don't really get out and patrol. They just sit in their cars. Once it's at the skate park, once it's by the Rusty Scupper. Sometimes drives down to where that cafe is supposed to be, like in that area. but doesn't seem to be engagement. Like, there's nothing that stops, like, big groups of individuals from just, like, moving into the neighborhood, or big sets of bikes, or the dirt bikes. We saw a dirt bike doing wheelies right by the skate park. Was it yesterday? Yesterday. And there was a little kid, like, running around. Like, there's just all kinds of insanity, and it doesn't stay there. It just moves straight up Battery, straight up William, into the park, along the side of the park. Like, it just, there's nothing that barriers our neighborhood from a lot of stuff.
Yeah, so if I'm hearing the point correctly, right, it's like this situation along Key Highway is exacerbated because of the central southern boundary. And that's certainly the case. I mean, I think it's probably objectively true. I don't think BPD would disagree with that. At the same time, if an officer, I haven't heard that, and I don't know, Mike sent an email that the response seemed to agree. I mean, I think they take that challenge seriously. I also think that, I have been told by BPD that if an officer sees a crime being committed, it's not like, oh, that's on the other side of the highway, right? Like, that's not the...
So real quick, folks, we are, before Zach continues, we're right now up against, we got a half hour left. So I want to get everybody's questions in, and but I'll let Zach go ahead and finish.
Yeah. That sounds like that should definitely not be the case, and we can follow up and verify that. I mean, that I have asked that specific thing before, and there are challenges with the deployments and stuff, but something like that should not happen. So,
real quick, I'm going to go to this gentleman right here.
Hi, Zach. Thanks for being here to listen to all of us, and I'm not going to tell a lot of anecdotes. There certainly are quite a few of them, but I do want to say that, watching the state of things in Federal Hill, at least, it appears that there is a real breakdown of the rule of law, if not in Federal Hill, in Baltimore. And I think, if you start with the dirt bikes, there's a perception that nothing's enforced. And I don't believe that all the dirt bikers are kids. I think some of them are up in their 20s and stuff like that. So, but I think that when you feel that you can do anything and it's just riding dirt bikes, it kind of moves into other areas. There's really no enforcement, and it's a huge, huge issue. Some of us here had the opportunity about a week and a half ago to attend a luncheon with Ivan Bates. He was asked about the dirt bikes and noted that since he's been in office, there have been 0 cases referred to him regarding dirt bikes. 0. So maybe some bikes have been confiscated, but I think there needs to be a stronger effort on that. Second of all, as far as juvenile crime, he said, there's nothing I can do about it. These kids are getting released by DJS. He is a strong believer in diversionary programs. I think it may be a good thing to try to get him involved in some of these cases. I think DJS should not have as much power, and they should be collaborating with the state's attorney on these issues, as well as the courts. And as far as things that you can do, you can advocate for all of us that you want to see the dirt biking stopped, because I believe that there's some kind of understanding in the city administration that this is all okay, because there's 0 enforcement on it. And until you get the message out that that's not okay, all this other stuff is just going to get worse and worse and worse. So I'd like to see you work with the state's attorney, work with the mayor to get the police department to be able to enforce. You know, they don't have to do big chases, but I know there's stuff that they can do to arrest some of these bikers. I don't think it's rocket surgery, to put out a mixed metaphor. And I'd like to also see you, why don't you write some legislation with stiffer penalties? In some municipalities in this country, it's a $10,000 fine to pop a wheelie. I have no idea what the penalties are in Baltimore City for owning a dirt bike, breaking every rule of the road that there is, going down streets the wrong way, riding in parks. I mean, anybody who get caught would be, have at least 10 tickets for some pretty serious stuff, and nothing at all is being done. And I think that if you wrote some legislation with severe penalties, that would get in the press, that would create an issue, that would get the word out. You got to be proactive on this. We can't keep doing what we've been doing.
Okay.
And real quick, folks, before Zach continues, we are right now at 7:45. We want to be respectful of everyone's time, so we're going to go into a rapid round after that. So,
okay.
Yep, so I know who's next, so if you could just keep it a little bit brief.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Yeah, thanks, Sabino. You talk about the sense that people are not being held accountable for crimes, right? The state's attorney's been in office for 2 years now, right? There was a time before the state's attorney, when the current state attorney was in office, when there were very real challenges with that, right, with young people being accountable. There was a situation in 2022 and 2023 between some state legislation, some policy changes, the Kia Hyundai craze that was a nationwide thing, like where a bunch of young kids were stealing cars and then being let out. Like there was when I was robbed at gunpoint, the kid didn't know me because I volunteer coach at digital. He happened to be a digital student. But I remember hearing from another coach and a kid that I coached that like, man, coach, it's crazy. They don't do anything to minors, right? Like that. There was certainly a sense of that. We are paying for it and working to address that. I do think it is actually really, really important to point out just data-wise on it. It's the second to last page on here. So clearance rate, meaning when someone commits a crime and they get charged with something in the city, or charged with something by law enforcement, for like 7 or 8 years after Freddie Gray, that was really low in the city. Last year, it was, in all of the kind of the violent cases you hear, it was above the national average. This year, it's on track to be above last year's rate. Like, that is extremely important. When people commit serious crimes, it is extremely important that we hold them accountable, right? So there's that conversation. Specifically to the dirt bikes, thank you for the feedback. We clearly need to figure out a better solution than what we have right now. And we don't have that answer yet, and we need to work on it. So thank you. And I'll pass off to Jeff for the rapid fire, or Deb, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Deb Kilty on Montgomery Street. I'm usually available online, but Zach, one, I appreciate you're here. I really look at things much more from a business perspective and also how that translates to what we are as a community. I was head of Worldwide Strategic Planning, Procter & Gamble, for many years, and what we had to do was look at some businesses and see who's got the problems, who's got the long-term solution, who's got the short-term solution, who's got the right team in place, and do you feel confident that a plan is in place that's going to be getting us different results than we are. And I gotta say, my nervousness is I'm not feeling like we have a plan in place that's gonna be different than where we are today. 5 months from now, we're only in May. We've got June, July, August, September, October with a lot of the dirt bikes. We always look at short-term and long-term. Al, you're right, long-term, it's a broken system for the kids, okay? They're having a blast out there. We gotta have STEM programs or anything else. And I think we're getting somewhere there. Short term, what have we got? What are the 5 things we're going to do majorly differently starting June 1 that feels like dirt bikes are not allowed? Rule of law back in place. What's the current best approach from these other cities that are already dealing with this? I can't believe it's not already on paper somewhere. I can't believe somebody's not saying, you own the item number 1, you own 2, you own 3, and every month we're going to send you back because short term, your business is on fire. You can't deal with that, and the only way you can make people feel comfortable is to say, we got a 5-point plan in place on the short term, long term we're doing this, here's who's accountable, and I'm going to send you guys a report every month, and I need you to help me and you to help me. Without that, we don't have confidence.
Yeah, thank you, Deb. You could kind of extrapolate that for public safety as a whole, but if we're talking specifically to dirt bikes, I mean, I think someone else had mentioned the idea of, like, what's the monthly data on that? I think that's a totally valid thing that we can probably provide as like a way to for folks to hold city administration accountable and whatnot. I think that's, we can probably have, talk to BBD about having them come give a clear, like what they're doing, what challenges are, things that maybe they'll say, hey, actually your councilman should be doing this. And then you guys can turn to me and say, damn it, Zach, you're supposed to do that thing, right? But I hear you on that one, and having a structure there is yeah. Everyone needs to feel like laws matter in a neighborhood or it's not a good place to live, and we're on the same wavelength, I guarantee you.
Hey, thank you, Councilman. You have a hard job, and I appreciate your time here. I'm going to go beyond dirt bikes a little bit. I'm concerned about the overall quality of life. I've lived here 29 years. We pay a lot of taxes. We pay a lot of car insurance. We can't get packages delivered because they'll get stolen. But one thing I'm very concerned about now is losing CVS and chauffeurs being vacant. That's the heart of Federal Hill. And you go back during the Cross Street, we used to be able to go there and buy fruits and vegetables. And if you go to the post office, I don't think we can pick up packages there. We have to go to Brooklyn Park in the county to get our packages. So the quality of life, and we just say, well, this is just the way it is. And it's really not good, especially when the amount of taxes we pay. And I just hope that, you look at the streets, they're dirty. I mean, we got crime and grime. And I mean, I hope that, these vacant buildings, that something's done. And I think part of the reason, I don't know why they left, but it's not good. And our quality of life is just deteriorated. So I hope you can do something to try to reverse that.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you. Were you the one who sent me the message on Facebook?
No, I don't use Facebook.
Okay, because someone a week ago or so sent me those exact points, basically. I can talk about, like, my efforts to support our main streets and make the main streets across the city better substantially for like way longer than we have time for. I have a lot of thoughts here. Briefly towards the CVS thing, a lot of different theories. They wouldn't give an answer. All of the retail, all of the pharmacies are closing a lot of stores nationwide. Some of that's probably has to do with some policy changes on the federal. There's like a full gambit of stuff. There's a real challenge of unoccupancy, like vacancy in the neighborhood that can assure you I'm acutely aware of and would be happy to talk at length about things that I am actively working on in legislation that I hope we can introduce before the end of this calendar year. Heard main streets make a vibrant main street, like if you've ever been to Frederick, like Frederick is a vibrant main street makes, whether you live there or you're visiting, it makes you feel like the neighborhood is like a good functioning place. It's incredibly important. I have 2 of them in my district, and I have all of downtown. Like, so the challenges are right up in front of my face, and I'm happy to talk about more in depth some other time. Thank you.
One more question over here, Zach.
Hi, my name's Anthony. I've lived in the neighborhood for about 8 years now. I keep seeing everyone say about the same thing, and I think the main problem here is even when we're giving police evidence and they're showing up on scene and they're catching people, like you said, they're getting released and then they're repeat offenders or they're not showing up to their court dates or anything. So I guess the real question is, how do we tighten that up so that way people aren't committing crimes again? And also, if they're just being let out again, what incentive does it give the police to even worry about those people? It's like, okay, you're the police, you show up, you drag them in, they have to deal with these criminals for the night, driving around with their squad car, they do all the paperwork, they send it off to the court, and then the court has a quick trial, they get a bracelet, and then that's it, and then they pick them up again in 60 days. So it's kind of like they're just seeing the same people, the police are seeing the same people, and then we're not seeing anything come of the police doing their jobs. So I guess, how do we fix that problem of not having these people come back out? As for the dirt bikes and Key Highway, I do know that the dirt bikes are getting caught and then returned back to people, and, well, not returned back to the people riding them, but I actually had my bike stolen about 20 years ago when I was young, and it turned up from Baltimore City Police. They ran the VIN and they were like, hey, we found your dirt bike. It was like 5 years later and it was all destroyed, but they did catch them eventually, and you'll get your bike back eventually. So they are catching the dirt bikes. What I am seeing with dirt bikes though are they're switching over to the electric dirt bikes, not e-bikes. I'm talking about the electric dirt bikes. They're quieter, not noisy, but the problem with that is going to raise more challenges in the future, 5 years down the road, when you get rid of all of the gas dirt bikes. They'll still be the e-dirt bikes, but you're not going to be able to find them at the gas stations. They also can store them in their houses easier because there's no gas fumes, so it's easier to store inside. So I don't think that the dirt bike problem is ever necessarily going to go away, but it should be brought down to their attention, like that gentleman was saying, and moving kids and people, their attention away from doing dirt bikes into something else. The 50 kids down there skateboarding in the skate park, that's 50 less people worried about riding dirt bikes every single weekend. You have more skate parks and stuff like that, more recreation, they're going to have less incentive to spend their Saturday trying to get a dirt bike and then learning to ride one. They're going to happen regardless, but there's going to be less of them if there are more options for them to do. For speed bumps and cameras, they're really not going to make a difference. I have been riding dirt bikes since I was 3 years old. I can blast over them at 50 miles an hour. A dirt bike isn't going to care about speed bumps. That's why police can't chase them. They can go through parks. They can go up and down stairs. They can cut through alleyways. You're never going to catch them. You can follow them and then pick them up later. But again, it's like whack-a-mole. So you're really never going to get rid of them. You can try to, catch them over time and just make it more annoying for them. But just moving their attention away would probably be the better one. But
One more question, because I have a gentleman over here.
yeah. So like the whole vandalism, smashing windows and stuff, sounds similar to like egging cars a decade ago. But again, to reiterate, the whole problem is people just aren't feeling like, even though that somebody gets caught, they submit all of the evidence, just nothing comes of it. So what can be done to make sure that something happens when people are caught? Because it seems like both sides. It's like, why am I going to report something if nothing's going to happen? And then why are the police even going to care to catch them if nothing's going to happen?
Yeah, so, thank you for all those. I guess the dirt bike stuff I think we covered. I guess good to know it's going to get harder. But to maybe that first and the fifth point are probably the most pressing ones. It is extremely, not to speak for police officers, but I've heard multiple officers say it's extremely demoralizing when you spend all that work to catch someone and they get released and you're like, well, what am I doing here, right? And then I have heard it plenty of time from residents too, of like, what's the point of even calling 911? What's the point of right? Like, are they gonna, and I think that I'll say for from a resident's perspective, like, do it. Like, don't let that voice talk to you. Like, we have to have the data. We have to know when this is happening. We have to have the information. Like, people have to do it. I get that that's like a hard, like the human, like I get that, and I've felt that before in the past myself. Like, we can't do that. And if you hear a neighbor say that, like, you should check them on that too. To the point about how are we preventing it, that, someone committing a serious crime and then being let out again. It's something I think I've hit on a couple times. That is a key issue. I think it's a DGS. It's a policy analysis of when youth gets let out pre-court date or not, right? And that needs to be, assessed on the DGS level. And then for the most serious and violent crimes, the question becomes, is that something DGS should be doing, or is that something that a court magistrate should be doing, as is the case in the adult system? And that's something that I'm very interested in exploring. I learned about very recently. But there are multiple ways to fix. That's a system, and it's a broken thing within a system, and we can pinpoint specific things and address it. So I appreciate your questions and thoughts there. Maybe
And
one more.
Zach, we're going to do one last question with this gentleman here, but also for those that are online, I was talking to Zach's Chief of Staff, Brandy. We're going to sit down after this and go over your online questions, talking to you. The room does not have to stay. They can leave, but we'll get to your online questions, and thank you for sticking with us. Here you go, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman, for being here. Just some ideas, not necessarily need answers, but can we hold parents, guardians accountable for the property damage? Can we hold TikTok the way that Brandon Scott is holding gun companies? I think he was trying to do something against gun companies. Can we hold TikTok accountable for spreading content that is promoting violence and or property damage? And then can we put our taxes into an escrow? This neighborhood here, this room here, like, do we have that right? Is that legal? Like, can we do that? And then lastly, we're throwing a block party here January 7th on Saturday.
June 7th?
Sorry, June 7th. Yeah. Thank you. I would love it if you came and just hung out with us, and we can watch the dirt bikes together. They'll be coming down Montgomery and turning on Light Street around 5:30. And we could, the idea I had was, can we videotape them with high-resolution cameras? Can we use technology like AI because they're going on the gram and posting that stuff. Like, there's a way to connect the dots. And that's it. I don't need an answer necessarily, but just wanted to put out ideas.
Okay, thanks, JP. Is the party, is that the same block party, is that Fran and Nancy's, or is that a different one? Because I think y'all's is on June 7th too, right? Okay, either way, I really appreciate the invite. I love block parties. Our 5-month-old hasn't met the extended family yet, so we are going to be down in Louisiana for a couple days, and that covers that time gap. To the point about, like, there's always, like, better ways to collect intelligence, and like, kids post everything on social media, and I think someone even kind of alluded to that point. What's being done there, and has that kind of fallen off or something? BPD's done a lot of multiple restructurings over the last couple of years. This could have fallen through in the shuffle, or it could be something they're actively doing. I don't know, and I should ask. As far as, and then the property tax and escrow. So I don't know, like, legally how that works. If you put your property taxes in escrow, I assume that would go to a court where the people with the tax in escrow would be against the city's lawyers, basically, and then you're at risk of not paying your property taxes. I'm not going to say what you should or shouldn't do there, but I mean, that's everyone's call as an individual, I suppose. So, but that would be, I don't know what the legal situation with that would be. So, but anyway, Well, I appreciate, man, time flies. I appreciate it. This is a tough situation. It's hard, and it's really bad for the neighborhood, and it's going to take a lot of effort and seriousness and a lot of different people and a lot of different residents, businesses, me, all the city agencies, state agencies working together on this. This is the type of stuff we need to be doing to resolve it. And I guess I'll just say, if for everyone who asked me to do something tonight, if I will also ask you to sign up for to get a camera and get on the camera network if you don't have it. So that is, that's a really serious, it's not that hard, but it is a real thing that can help and has helped. So with that said, I think we're going to transition over to the online questions, and obviously everyone can stay if you want to hear those answers. So.
Yeah, if you guys want to stay, we're going to transition over to the online questions, or you can head on out. I'm going to walk up with Zach, and we'll start reading off some of these online questions.